Hi everyone, my name is Kate Haley. I'm a portrait and travel photographer based in Seattle. And today I've put together just a quick Lightroom tutorial on converting images to black and white. I hope you'll enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody, this is Kate. I thought I would do another quick Lightroom edit, and this time talking about editing in black and white. A lot of times we have the option in our camera, we could take photos in black and white. But if we take a photo in black and white, especially if you're shooting a JPEG, you only will ever have that image in black and white. So typically I will use raw files and convert them to black and white in Lightroom or Capture One, depending on what the project is for. With the Fujifilm system, since I am a Fujifilm user, I do use their film simulations. Their black and white options are really nice. So sometimes if I just want a quick JPEG in camera that's black and white, I'll use that option as well. But for today, we're going to talk about how we can affect not just making an image black and white, but play around with the tones of an image a little bit, just so you can see how you can create a little bit of a different mood. So this is a shot from the library here in Seattle. I took this a while back. It's not the best photo either overall, but there are elements of it I like. There are colors that I know I can manipulate and get some different tones from. There's also some elements that I will crop out and might do a little perspective control. So I'm going to take this from this starting point and we're going to kind of go through the whole thing. So I've selected the image and I'm going to pop into the develop module. And from here, I'm going to start with just a couple of basic things. Now, in Lightroom, there are presets that have some black and white options. So sometimes I might peek through those to see if I like any of those presets. But even if I do, I will typically take that as a starting point and then play around with it a little bit more. So the one I think I find the most interesting is the high contrast. For me personally, I tend to like a black and white image that's a little bit more contrasty. You might be asking, what's up with the red and the blue in the image? This is displaying the clipping of the highlights and the shadows in the image. So where you're seeing blue, those areas are basically pure black. And where you're seeing red, those 8 places are pure white. So in the top left corner of the histogram and the top right corner, those are my clipping options. So if you see there, it's showing you that highlight clipping is available to be on or off. So if I click this, that turns the clipping off. And if I click this one, that turns the shadow clipping off. So I keep these on a lot of the time to kind of let me know where things have been pushed a little bit too far in either direction. With those engaged in the basic panel, I can play around with the highlights and the shadows and just bring those back up. Having complete blacks in a photo that you're going to post online is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're thinking about printing the image, you don't want pure black because it comes out kind of splotchy in a print and it doesn't look very good. So I'll normally pull the blacks up a little bit and the highlights down a little bit. One trick to really see what's happening is if you hold down Alt or Option on your keyboard. When you do this, it's hiding everything but the highlights that are clipped or the shadows that are clipped. So it's just kind of another way to just see what you're affecting in that. So that's, again, hold down Alt while moving the slider and you'll get to see exactly what's being affected. Now I want some of those shadows gone and some of those highlights gone because for me personally, I like to have an image that's a little bit more contrasty. So I'm going to just disengage those now because they are a little bit distracting, and I'm going to leave that there. The next thing I'm going to play around with is transform. So transform is where we can kind of fix our perspective control. And the first thing I like to do here is click auto and see what auto does. The goals here will be to kind of fix some of the lines so they kind of adjust a little bit better. So if I hit Y on the keyboard while I'm in develop, I get to kind of see a before and after preview. So the change is just very subtle, but if you notice on the left side of the image, That one line there is a little bit crooked, but on the right, that has been fixed. The door is also a little bit less crooked, where it's a little bit straightened out here. So again, that's Y on the keyboard to show you before and after. I will say I don't like the door at all, so I'm gonna go into the crop tool now, and I'm probably gonna play around with what this looks like square, and I'm gonna get rid of that door completely. I'm also looking at these lines and patterns, and to me now that is a much more interesting photo. So if you'll notice the before and after here, now I've gotten rid of that whole door. To me, that door is a distraction. And I like this a little bit better. That also puts my subject slightly off center, but it gives you these interesting lines to play around with. The next thing I'm gonna look at is when you've converted an image to black and white, the panel here, the third one down that normally says HSL, now says B&W for black and white. Once you're in here, you will see a black and white mix, and these are the underlying colors of your image originally. What I like to do is play around with these sliders to see how I can affect the overall intensity or tones of an image that was once color but is now black and white. So as you see, now the floor that she's standing on is red. So as I push the red to the right, you see that floor getting much lighter. As I push it to the left, you'll see it getting much darker and a little bit more intense. As I play around with the blues, that's going to affect the outer part of the library because there was some blue sky that day, and in general, the white balance of the image had some blue tints to it. But you can see as I'm pulling the aqua or the blue back and forth, it's either getting brighter or darker. So out of the box, you can just click black and white and it will make a black and white copy for you. But I love to go into this B&W panel and kind of play around with the sliders to see how I can affect the overall tone and intensity of that. And I'll typically play through each slider just to see what's happening. What you'll see in some cases, like when I play with the yellow, the floor is getting brighter or darker, but also when I play with the orange, it's also getting brighter or darker. So Lightroom is looking at those underlying colors, which this image in color, I'm going to guess that floor is some kind of orange, yellow, or combination thereof. There's not a lot of purple or magenta, as I recall. There's some in the floor. As you can see, the floor is getting a little bit brighter or darker. But these are just things that we can make and play with just to see if we can achieve a different result. So on the left, you'll see the color version after the crop. But notice on the right, the transform tool kind of fixed lining up the floor, and then also kind of fixed the stacks and the lines in the background here. Notice the floor in the library is kind of a yellow-orange. That's going to be from the light, most likely. And then the building itself kind of has this bluish tone. So I kind of played around with that, and voila, here's our final result. So it's kind of interesting, you know, when we think about black and white images, we don't want to just hit the black and white button, play around with it, add a little bit more mood, add a little bit more contrast, see what you can come up with creatively to make the image kind of stand out a little bit. So thanks for your time. I just thought this would be fun to do a quick little tip on how to make a black and white photo a little bit better.